How is everyone today? I usually don't speak through a mic, so I apologize if I get a little loud. I might need those of you sitting next to the speaker might have to actually move into the middle. I get excited about these topics. So just out of curiosity, I want to find out who's here, real quick, just a couple of you, and what you're here for. Anybody want to volunteer? Nobody wants to speak up. All right, I will do my best then to cover the topic at hand. This presentation I built in conjunction with Scott Ambler. This is Disciplined Agile Delivery and Data Warehousing. So here we go. How many of you know what Agile means or Disciplined Agile Delivery is? Okay, so bottom line, Disciplined Agile Delivery or the things that Scott Ambler talked about. Scott Ambler is the original father of the Agile Manifesto. How many of you know what the Agile Manifesto is? Okay. Thank you, Christian. So Scott Ambler wrote the original Agile Manifesto, and I'm proud to say that he's not only working with me on Data Vault, but he's also a big supporter. So what we're going to talk about today is this. No question is out of bounds as long as it's about the presentation. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. Why can't my people deliver in an agile fashion? So what does that mean, right? What does that mean? That means, why can't we have training? Why can't we put people in that understand the processes, that understand how to execute on Agile? So we're going to explore this a little bit. What does it mean to have an Agile delivery mechanism, right? How do I get from zero to Agile? How many of you are involved in an Agile project today? Or what you might call an attempt at an Agile project today, right? How many of you have been formally trained in Agile? Okay. So some of you, if I get something wrong, those of you that have been formally trained, please correct me. We're all human, I make mistakes, so there we go. Technology, how can technology enable Agile delivery? And this is a big one. How many of you have bosses that say, oh, we have to automate, and they don't understand what that means, right? So automation, you can't get there from here without being agile in your processes. But in order to be agile, we got to start with the people, right? It's all about the people. Being agile means you've got a team that is engaged, a team that is capable of running your project in an agile fashion. You know, you've got these folks. I don't know if you've had these folks, but I've been on some teams where we start to move towards an agile fashion, and all of a sudden this one person or these two people say, well, we're not going with you. We want to be the superstar. We're going to drag our feet. We're going to deliver the way we've always delivered. We're not going to follow whatever new thing that you're doing, and it's an agile fashion that we're trying to accomplish. Anybody have any of these people on their teams, right? These are the kinds of people you have to remove from your team. You either need to fire them or you need to move them off onto another project, because they will keep you from being agile. They will stop you from succeeding. Star players on an agile team don't work, okay? Everyone is collaborative. So one of the Agile Manifesto principles is all about collaboration, okay? Collaboration is a big part of it. Everyone plays a role. And everyone on the agile team, at least from the perspective of the implementation side, is a backup to everyone else on the agile team. That's generally the way it works. So if someone leaves the team or goes on vacation, the backup can fill in. Maybe not as good or as well or do it as quickly, but they can fill in and help fill the role and get the work done. So being agile is about people. That's where it starts. It's about people. And if you don't have the right dynamic, you will not be agile. If someone says, I'm the star player, I always do the work, I do all the work, none of you get it done, you don't understand it, those kind of people can never be agile. Well, they can if time softens them and they come back to the team and say, I'm ready to be a team player. But you need team players in order to accomplish agility. So let's explore the foundations of Agile, if my clicker will work. Okay, there we go. I might be running out of battery. So why can't my people deliver in an agile fashion? What does this really mean? Well, the first thing you need in terms of delivering in an agile, yeah, my clicker's not working. I'm sorry. The first thing you need to be agile is inspiration. Inspiration. Does everybody understand what this means? Inspiration. You got to have an idea. You got to have people who are inspired to be agile. And this is what I was just talking about. You can't have someone on the team dragging their feet saying, I don't want to go that way. I don't want to do this. I don't want to create a solution with you. I want to be the star. I want to maintain my own kingdom. That doesn't work. You got to be inspired to be agile. You got to have a problem that you want to solve in an agile fashion. You got to have people that want to contribute to the solution in a rapid fashion. The next thing that you need is motivation, right? You can't have motivation without inspiration, right? You got to be motivated to participate, motivated to go to training, motivated to learn new things. Anybody in here on a team that's been doing the same thing over and over and over again for the last 5 years, right? And is tired of it? Don't raise your hands, it's self-incriminating. Yeah. That's the nature. Then you need education. This is the major part that the business management seem to always forget. Oh, we're going to wake up one day. Oh, we're going to be agile today. When was the last time you heard that? From now on, we are agile. How well does that work, right? With no training. Oh, you're just going to deliver faster. Better, faster, cheaper. Anybody ever have, tell you that, right? That doesn't work. So first you need inspiration, then you need motivation. You've got to want to do these things. And this is all about people. And then you need to be educated. This is the next piece. You have to get the proper education in Agile. It's just like anything else we've been doing for the last 20 years. Show of hands, how many of you have at least 20 years of experience in IT or data or systems? 15 years or more? 10 years or more, okay? The point is this, we've all been around long enough to know better, right? And education is the key to new things, to getting new things right. There's no substitute for good education. And Scott and I have talked about this over and over again. We run into customers that say, oh, we want to be agile. And as I said, you don't wake up one morning and just say, oh, today looks like a good day. The sun is out and the air is fresh and it's nice and crisp. I'm going to do everything agile today. Well, without knowing how to go about that process, it's not going to work. It's pretending let's say you buy a new Ferrari. Everybody like Ferraris? If you don't like Ferraris, maybe you like Lamborghinis. How about Koenigsegg's, right? These supercars? Maybe you don't like those. Maybe you like Mercedes, right? Or Audi or whatever it is. But it's like getting a brand new car and never looking in the owner's manual and saying, gee, I think today I'm going to be agile. I'm going to modify the engine. And you've never had a mechanics class in your life. So you end up putting a carburetor where the air filter should go. Does that work? No. In fact, the car probably won't run. So this is the point, right? Then the last piece here is tooling. And unfortunately, businesses get this completely opposite. Where do businesses normally start in this paradigm? Anyone? Tooling. Oh, we bought a new tool that says you're going to be agile. So here it is. Go read the manual. How well does that work? Oh, you're going to generate for your warehouse now, or you're going to generate for your BI solution now. No, that doesn't work. Tooling is the last piece to the puzzle. It's the last piece of the puzzle, okay? So this is where it is. Tooling and enablers are the last component to being agile. So let's contemplate something for a minute. Frameworks versus methodologies. Anybody ever hear these terms before? If you're going to consider agile, you have to think about frameworks versus methodologies. So let's change gears here. Frameworks are a little loose. How many of you, by show of hands, know John Zachman or Zachman framework for IT? Just a couple. Doesn't mean you need to know it, okay? But it is something that is a reference framework under which we all do our work, usually within a cell. Data warehousing or business intelligence is one cell inside of the Zachman framework, and it might bleed over into a couple of other cells. So it's a much larger enterprise IT-focused framework. But frameworks are loose. Frameworks are loose. Data Warehouse 2.0, my good friend Bill Inman is here. If you don't have a chance, haven't had a chance to talk to him, sit down and talk to him. The man is brilliant. He created the industry that we all earn a living in, at least in data warehousing today. So I'm very grateful for that. But Data Warehouse 2.0 is a framework for data warehousing. It tells you the pieces that you need in order to get things done. You do need a roadmap. Anybody out here ever travel to a new place or a new country and not have a GPS and then try to find your way around? How well does that work? Come on. You guys must be lunge kicking in or something, right? It doesn't work very well, especially if you have to travel a good distance through the city, and the city's full of one-way streets, much like it is here in Hamburg, right? If you don't know your way around, you're going to end up doing circle after circle after circle trying to find your address. Anybody done that? With the construction around here? Yeah, of course. Even if you know your way, right? So frameworks only give you the what, the pieces, right? They don't tell you the how. How should I build? What are the best practices? How can I be agile? How can I be rapid and successful and quick? So methodologies give you the approach to doing something, the standards, the best practices. And this is what Data Vault methodology or Data Vault 2.0 brings to the table. So if you're looking at Data Vault 2.0, it is actually supported by both my good friends Bill Inman as well as Scott Ambler in terms of being agile. Everything we've baked into Data Vault 2.0 is approved by these two individuals. Okay, so let's move along. So let's take a look at what this means. So contemplate the following. Agile equals framework and Data Vault 2.0 methodology, frameworks versus methodology. So delivering in an agile fashion requires a solid design principle. A solid design principle. You have to have the right roadmap and the right instructions. I can give you 53 different ways to get from Hamburg to Munich. On a bicycle, on a walking trail, on a hike through the forest and down through the woods, or whatever you want to do, or by car, by Autobahn, different cities on the Autobahn. I can route you through 3 different ways, right? So this is the nature of it. Being agile is the most direct route. But it's only the most direct route if there's no construction going on in the middle of the Autobahn. Everybody understand this? Eh? No? Maybe? Is this helpful for you? Because I've got other places to go. I'm just kidding. All right, so delivering in an agile fashion requires a solid pattern-based, repeatable methodology. And this is what Data Vault 2.0 brings to the table. You need to have a solid plan for executing, for implementing, and designing, and building, and getting your team on board. So let's take a look at what that means, okay? Clean standards. Before we go any further, let's explore the definitions, right? A lot of people get up here and they talk to you about agile this and methodology that. How many of you are using Scrum? Yeah, lean initiatives, Kanban, right? Okay, my favorite term, don't tell Scott I said this. This is a strange story. I said, Scott, you know, I've got customers who are using Scrum and Agile hybrid. And I said, is it okay if I call it Scragile? And he went, don't do that. It's not called Scragile. It's actually called Disciplined Agile Delivery. That's what Scott calls it. So it's a modification. Most of my customers are not running Scrum Rigid, and most of my customers are not running Agile Solid or Straight. So let's take a look at this. Agility is the ability to be quick and graceful. Sounds simple enough, right? But let's take a look at what else this is. Scrum is a simple framework. A framework, there it is, a framework. It doesn't tell you how. It tells you what you need, right? It doesn't tell you how, right? For effective team collaboration, but it's only focused on team collaboration. It's not necessarily focused on work in progress. So what is Kanban, right? People tell me, oh, I'm implementing Kanban. And I say, oh, really? Are you in the manufacturing business? No, well then you're not building stuff just in time. But it doesn't have to necessarily just be the manufacturing business. Kanban is a nature of just-in-time delivery. That could be anything that you're building, okay? Kanban leads into Six Sigma and measurements and all those other things. So Agile is an evolutionary process. You must get trained in order to become an Agile organization, okay? You must get trained, and you must understand these basic definitions. So let's continue on with this. What's the next piece? Nearly as many definitions of lean initiatives or lean as lean practitioners and consultants. Okay? How many of you remember function point analysis from the 70s? Am I dating myself here? I've got white hair here. My wife says, you should go get it colored. You're showing your age. I'm like, nah. They call it distinguished these days, right? Isn't that what it is? But anyway, the point is lean initiatives was a way of measuring. Anybody in here familiar with capability maturity models? Key process areas, key process indicators. Anybody ever apply these techniques to data warehousing and the process of building your business intelligence solution? Okay, here's the deal. If you truly want to be agile or successful at agility, then you need to understand what it is you're building. You need to know how long it takes and where the problems are in the process of building your BI solution. Otherwise, how do you go from a 7-week turnaround cycle to a 2-week turnaround cycle? Does everybody get this? You can't optimize what you don't measure. Okay? That's just the start of it. So capability maturity model, otherwise known as CMM, is a way of handling these components in an agile fashion. So this is what we're trying to look at. Lean initiatives is a way of eliminating waste. How do you eliminate waste in the process of building enterprise BI solutions or data warehouses, or even within a sprint, a 2-week sprint? How do you eliminate waste? That process didn't work well for us. We tried it, and it caused our build-out process to be 3 weeks or 4 weeks. How do you eliminate that process, or reduce, or remove, or do better? I'm sure you've heard better, cheaper, faster. Well, that's the business way of saying mature the process of building your data warehouse. This is all part and parcel of being agile. The word agility is just the cream of the crop. It's the icing on the top of the cake. You still have to bake the cake underneath, and you better understand what the recipe is for getting into the cake. So this is the nature of it. So let's take a look at this. Disciplined Agile Delivery is a hybrid framework. Now, this is not my definition. As you can see here, this is straight from Scott Ambler. Builds upon the solid foundation of other methods and process frameworks. Now do you begin to understand why training is so important? Now, the good news is my buddy Scott Ambler has a 2-day training class. It's only 2 days. Teamwork, team-based work, and he gets you off the ground quick. So you can understand this fairly quickly. But the whole nature of this is that it's more than meets the eye, right? We've all seen that picture with an iceberg and the tip of the iceberg and then the big iceberg underneath the water. That's kind of what we're looking at here with agility. To be agile is a learning curve. To be agile is an evolution. When you start your agile journey, your team delivery cycles or your sprints might very well be 7 weeks or 10 weeks. Until you can manage and measure and optimize the process, you need to understand what the process is. You need to identify the key process areas of how you build before you can optimize and shrink it down. To give you an example, I've had a customer in the Netherlands using Data Vault 2.0 now for 2 years, and they're going from 2-week sprints down to 1-week sprints. But they didn't start there. It's a team of 5 people supporting 1,000 people in their organization. So before you think, oh, well, that's just a small team, a small company, no. They're fielding lots of requests. They probably have 30 service requests almost every day or once a week. So this is important. So the Data Vault 2 methodology is a group of implementation directives. It tells you how to implement along the DAD framework. The other piece that we talk about in terms of being agile is understanding TQM. Does everybody understand? I just, up here earlier, I mentioned total quality management. Does everybody know what total quality management is? Everybody basically understand the term? Total quality management is one step past data quality. And this is where organizations fall down. Why is this part of Agile? And I'll answer that in a minute. But total quality management is basically the feedback loop, putting accountability for the data back in the business user's hands. Why is this important? Because you don't want to be in the reporting business. You don't want to be building reports when you should be building value out of your sprints for the data warehouse, for the business. You want to be exploring new information systems and new deliveries. You want to be delivering constant value over time. This is what Agile is about. It's not just about being fast or cheaper, right? Better, faster, cheaper is a part of it. But better, people forget this whole thing about better. It's not just about data quality. Data quality is improve the quality, put it out on a BI solution, and off it goes into the Netherland of business. That's data quality. Total quality management includes not only the feedback loop of the business user, not only accepting accountability for that. You heard my story about the CFO. This is where this comes from. This organization is a massive bank, and they own 53 subsidiary banks underneath, and they're running real time. Their development teams are agile now, and they have over 150 programmers on Cloudera Hadoop alone. And they have teams of 20 running around in their business intelligence solutions, building parallel team paths, being agile in 2-week deliveries. This is after 2.5 years. They did not start there. They did not start there. But in order to get there, you have to understand the total quality cycle. Total quality management, accountability where accountability belongs. Why is this important? Because the last thing you want is your IT people managing the data and fixing the data on a daily basis. That's not your job. Who owns the data, IT or business? Come on, it's not a trick question. Business. Business owns the data. So why are we fixing the data on a daily basis? This is the question. And if we're stuck fixing the data on a daily basis, how do we become agile in answering business user questions? And what happens when we aren't agile and don't answer business user questions? What do the business users do? Well, I can tell you what I've seen. The business users will go around us. The business users will say, IT costs too much. IT takes too long. IT never delivers on time or in budget. Why? Because you're fiddling around with their data. You're not answering their business questions. Does this make sense? Huh? So to be agile is to clean out the process. Total quality management includes the quality of the processes and the accountability of the data set back with the business users. So this is very, very important thing for you to think about. Six Sigma. Does everybody understand what Six Sigma is? Well, you do now, right? It's a way to measure errors. It's a way to find out what's going wrong, okay? This is a management technique. It's got proven mathematics. You've all heard the term, at least for operational systems, 9 nines uptime or 6 nines uptime. They're referring to a 6 Sigma number, a very specific number that refers to the amount of uptime an operational system has to have. Well, data warehouses, guess what? In order to become critical path for the business, they are becoming a system of record. In order to become a system of record, they must become trustworthy. In order to become trustworthy, you have to put the data back in the hands where it belongs. And you need to make the end users, business users, accountable for that information. So this is all part of it. Now, Six Sigma, what does that do for our agility path of building an enterprise data warehouse or a BI solution? Six Sigma allows us to measure the defects in our ETL or ELT routines. The defects in the process of getting the requirements and building the solution that meets the business user's needs. That's what Six Sigma does, okay? It allows us to find out where the process problems are. This is the business of building data warehouses. How many of you in here like to make more money? Wow, that's just a couple. Okay, the rest of you see me after class, right? So the point is this. How many of you like your jobs, right? Well, okay, and maybe don't answer that one. But the point is this. If you like what you do and you want to succeed at it and you're like me and you want to do better, then you're going to think about what kinds of problems did I have in the last time I iterated? And that's what agility tries to focus on. If you're in a 3-week sprint, why is it a 3-week sprint? What caused it to run beyond 2 weeks that made it a 3-week sprint? Was it a process problem? Was it a business requirements gathering problem? There's all sorts of things in the agility curve. What were the errors? Did we spend time after we delivered to production? Did we spend time going back and instead of delivering new value, we were fixing the stuff we just put out? That's what the Six Sigma is meant to help you identify, right? And what did I say earlier? I said you can't optimize what you don't measure. Well, if you don't measure, then you can't measure what you don't identify. Does this make sense to you? So you got to identify, to measure, to optimize. This is the premises of maturing the process of building data warehouses or BI solutions. Okay, so Six Sigma is a measurement technique that you need to know about. And the end of this, or the capstone, is CMMI, Capability Maturity Model Framework. Now, you don't need to go out and read 30,000-page tomes. This, by the way, comes from Carnegie Mellon, CMMI, and they are 30,000-page tomes. They're much like the Zachman IT framework. They're wide and expansive. You don't need to know all of this. You just need to know enough in order to get the job done, in order to be agile. Okay? So this is how these components and these methodologies fit together. So let's take a look at Disciplined Agile Delivery goals. If you're looking at Disciplined Agile Delivery, This is the nature of it, right? You've got an inception phase, form initial teams and all that. I'm not going to read this slide because it's all up there. Construction phases, ongoing phases, transition phases. But what I want to point out are the components where the methodology tells you how to do this. How to do this. Okay, let me just stop and ask, are there any questions so far? Is this what you would hope to get from this session? Yes? No? Okay. Ah, okay. Anyone else want to know a little more about the Data Vault 2.0 methodology? Okay. So I will stop and segue for just a minute about the Data Vault 2.0 methodology. The Data Vault 2.0 methodology is not extremely new. It is based on all of these principles. It comes from the best practices from CMM. It comes from the best practices of Six Sigma, which is why I'm talking about them. It comes from the best practices of PMP, or project management practices. Everybody know about that, right? The PMBOK, the project management body of knowledge, all of these kinds of things. I was formally trained in Six Sigma, in CMM, at a company I used to work for, a U.S. government agency, and I spent probably 5 years working with CMM principles and best design practices. Out of that, I realized what we're doing, when we build data warehouses, what are we building? Well, ultimately, we're building software. How many of you ever look at your data warehouse build and go, well, we're building software? Do we have a production release? Do we have a test release? Do we have a development release? Do we have unit tests? All of that stuff aligns with software development. How many of you know about SDLC, Software Development Life Cycles? How many of you have made the connection between SDLC and building data warehouses? This is the missing part, right? So CMM, the Data Vault 2.0 methodology, is surrounded with these concepts and the best practices in order to enable your teams to make this work. Now, what you get when you go through the Data Vault 2 methodology is you get the best practices all wrapped together, and you get basically a guidebook on how to navigate through these principles. The brand new book that I have that's being printed, as we mentioned before, is called Building a Scalable Data Warehouse with Data Vault 2.0. 687 pages. Took us 2 years to write. Is full, chock full of implementation details and specifics about where CMM is integrated, where TQM is integrated, where SEI and Six Sigma work, and it has all the mathematics. That book is also soup to nuts, or end to end. It includes all the components that you need for even a hands-on project. So you can download the example data sets. The source is there. It's built on the SQL Server stack. It doesn't mean that it's SQL Server specific, but we have the SSIS jobs, the DTSX jobs, and all that. The Data Vault 2.0 methodology is a comprehensive design paradigm that builds on these best practices and principles. It makes the assumption that you understand that when you build a data warehouse or a business intelligence solution, you are delivering software. If you don't agree with that paradigm, see me after class. I've got slides that explain otherwise. But obviously, we may use software to leverage, right, to leverage production or to leverage generation. We might use Informatica or DataStage or Talent or Ab Initio or Power Design or whatever. But in the end, we have all the same software development life cycles that existed in the SDLC. So what agility brings to the table is this idea of doing it better, faster, cheaper. But then the question becomes, how do we get there from here? We don't want to be stuck in the old waterfall from an enterprise perspective. That's the whole nature. Part of agility says, I'm going to design or be able to design, once I've been trained, a project that works in a 2-week time frame. And then if I go along, let's say I go along, and this happens at customer sites frequently, I go along 3 or 4 days and we talk to the customers and all of a sudden we hit a roadblock. It's not an IT roadblock. It could be. But most of the time, it's a business roadblock. Like, for instance, there was one company I was doing work for, and they wanted us to load data to a chart of accounts in a data warehouse. And they wanted the data warehouse to figure out where all of the financial information fit in the chart of accounts. Does that sound like a data warehouse job to you? Okay. So here was the issue. They had, at the end of the day, we did some digging and we found out they had no less than 7 different sources for chart of accounts, Only one of them was trusted, and it ran end of month close of books. So how do we enable the business to be more agile and more rapid, and how do we deliver? Now, the other flip side of that story was they've been trying to do this in their data warehouse, their existing quote-unquote information model and data warehouse for the last 15 months, unsuccessfully, I might add. So what we ended up doing was saying to the business, look, as part of the agility, we had to stop the project, which was a deliverable goal, in 2 weeks, and say, we're going to refocus the team on another project. You have to be willing to change direction. That's part of being agile. This project or this sprint's now on hold until the business comes back with an answer. Here are the options, business, that you need an answer for. The option number one, you could choose to do nothing, and it will take another 15 months, and we probably won't have anything in the warehouse for you. You could, option number two, you could hire a programmer that understands the Java code that does the chart of accounts and the closing of the books every month, and you could change the code on that operational system that feeds finance and give us the intermediate tables that it was not dumping. So this is part of the data quality and data initiative, and so the warehouse would warehouse the results of that operation that was trusted. We ended up saving the company, and that's what they chose, but they took 2 or 3 weeks to make that decision and make the change. Meanwhile, we were off on another sprint delivering. So this is kind of what it means to be agile. But with the Data Vault 2 methodology, what we bring into the fray is, in addition to just the methodology of all these components, but we bring into we bring in the Data Vault modeling, and we bring in the ETL paradigms or the ELT paradigms. By the way, in case you hadn't guessed, and I've said this before publicly, ETL is dead. ETL is dead. If you want to scale, ETL won't do it. Long live ELT. Now, what does that mean? That means the paradigm of design of moving something out of a database and through a stream and down into a target is dead and gone. The only way to scale, now I'm talking hundreds of terabytes here. If you say to me, well, Dan, I've only got a 53 gig system, you can still use ETL and get away with it. But when you get into scale, this is also why you see with NoSQL, they say move the processing to where the data is. That's another way of saying ETL is dead. So that's my soapbox. But this is the nature of the Data Vault 2 methodology. We come in and help you understand how to be agile, how to make this work, and how all these components fit together. Does that help you understand the question?
Could you also highlight the differences between Data Vault 1.0?
Yes, I will get to that near the end of my presentation. I have one slide in this presentation on that. I go a bit further in other presentations on that, but let me see what I can do here. We might be able to play with time. Are there any questions so far? Okay, some good questions. All right, so here we go. People say, well, how is Data Vault 2.0 methodology agile? Is it agile? And not just Scott Ambler, but one of my customers. Okay, this doesn't look so big. A structural change to every single table in the source system and in the data warehouse is 40-odd tables. So what is the impact of being agile, of using Data Vault methodology? This was the impact from my customer, QSuper. We automated the change impacts, and they were dealt with one developer over a period of 3 weeks. One developer. All 40 source system changes. When was the last time you were able to make a change to your data warehouse because there were 40 source system table changes? When was the last time? All right, can you do this today? If the answer is no, that's because you aren't properly implementing agility in most cases, okay? There might be other outstanding circumstances that cause this, but this is the nature of it. Most of the work was used. Now you start to see metadata to drive changes. They had gotten to the point of optimization, and what did they leverage to get here? A tool, a generation tool, an automation tool, okay? You can't automate what you don't optimize, and you can't optimize what you don't what? Come on. You can't optimize what you don't measure, right? Next time, don't be so afraid to speak up, right? Because you're right. That's the way it works. So this is the whole nature. And I've got more quotes at the end of this show beyond the final slide, if you want to see them, that talk about this specific project and how they got there. So why can't my people deliver in an agile fashion? Because they require a solid methodology. And this is where people get off the boat. Well, you can go learn Agile all day long, but unless you have a standard design best practice for data warehousing to build on, you're not going to get there. It's like walking in and saying, I'm going to build skyscrapers today. Is anybody familiar with the the method for building skyscrapers, it's much different than the method for building houses, right? Because you have different weight distribution. You have to worry about wind and the height of the building and the footprint of the building and the components of security. And what if, at least in the United States, you have to worry about earthquakes and now airplanes crashing in. So lots of different things that have to go into consideration of a skyscraper, right? So lots of different things. But you need a solid methodology, not just a framework. In other words, you can have blueprints for the best house in the world. But unless you have specifics that tell you what to build first, how to build it, and then how to check it for errors. What is the job of an inspector for your home before you can purchase it or finalize it with the city? What's the job of an inspector? Anybody ever had a house built or know about this? The inspector comes in and says yes or no. This home is safe for people to live in. That's the bottom line, right? So in this case, being agile means being able to provide a home in a proper, well-built, and timed approach. So this is the nature of it. So another key, people, inspiration, motivation, education, culture. Data Vault 2.0 brings the standards. It brings the methodology. It brings the best practices and a pattern-based model and a repeatable implementation. So these are the components underneath the methodology that you would use to build your data warehouse successfully. Just a show of hands, how many of you are working on Data Vault in any shape or form, 1.0 or 2.0 today? Just a couple? Okay, that's good. How many of you are curious about Data Vault 2.0? A few more. So you're going to be able to, as I said, buy the book. You can pre-order it on Amazon. I'm not trying to sell it to you, but I am. It's cheaper than the class. It has everything. Let me just put it this way. The book has everything I've been teaching in the Data Vault 2.0 certification class for the last 4 or 5 years, so 3 years. Actually, 3 years for the CDVP2. So it's got all of this stuff in there. So anyway, it brings all these components together. So what does it mean to have agile delivery? Let's talk about that. Okay. So agile delivery objective. The objective, you hear this all the time, a 2-week sprint, a 3-week sprint. What does that mean? Well, does that mean I'm going to build an entire end-to-end solution in 2 weeks? The answer is no. And especially when you start, your business requirements acquisition phase might be a 2-week sprint in order to learn what's wrong with the business acquisition phase. How long does it take to gather requirements, and where can I do it better? Remember, it's about monitoring, measuring, and then optimizing, right? That's all part of the agile componentry. And then your next phase might be a design phase. So when you begin this process, you might end up with a 4 or 6 or 8 week sprint cycle for one deliverable or one set of deliverables. But it's very, very important that you measure this up, right? You've got to take a look at this from a delivery component. So what makes an agile process? What makes an agile process? An agile process really is comprised of scope, simplicity, and automation. But remember, you can't get to scope and simplicity and automation until the people are trained. You could have the best tools in the world. Anybody ever have tools sitting on their shelves and their company that are just gathering dust? The company bought this tool, shoved it in your face and said, here, we bought the license for you. And you went, why? Right? Yeah, well, we've all seen that. But what purpose does the tool serve? So you can't automate. The best automation tool in the world is not going to serve you if you don't have a good practice to implement it with, if you don't have common standards to build from. So that's the nature of these tools. So let's move along here. So agile process build, this is what it looks like, right, from Disciplined Agile Delivery. Initial idea, envision, hypothesis, you build a little. Don't build a lot. We talked about this up here on the stage. Scope, 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 which brings me to the next point. You want to apply the proper scope in your agile process build, or you're not going to get there. Right? Does it do me any good to walk into an enterprise and go, you know what, you're a large corporate global enterprise, a banking solution, and you have 53 different banks all over the world. I can build you a warehouse in 2 weeks. How well does that go over? Right? That doesn't work. It doesn't work, okay? You need to do it. Let me ask you this. When you have a large problem in life, in regular life, to face, what's the first thing you do with it? Decompose. You break it down. Give the man 1,000 points. See, seen whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter. If you haven't checked it out, it's on YouTube. It's really cool. There's something called Scenes from a Hat. They're just my favorite. Anyway, the point is this. You decompose it. Why then do we go into IT and wear a different mindset and decide to try and tackle the entire problem all in one project? It's ridiculous. Apply your common sense to what you're doing in your build cycles, and you will succeed. So scope is a big, big part of it. Process agility, the cleaner, the simpler the integration, and we go through each of these components in Data Vault land. But you want a clear delineation. Now, these are some of the artifacts that we build in Data Vault 2.0 methodology. So that's what you're looking at. We look at the business case, but our business cases are 1 page to 1.5 pages long. And I'm not talking about 6-point font printed sideways across the axis of the paper. No, not unreadable junk. We're talking about 12-point single-line spacing, right? So business cases, well-defined. You've got to have a well-defined business case. And if it's not well-defined, then you need to have a defined objective, right? What kind of computation are we doing? What kind of star schema are we producing? What type of metric does the business user want, right? Then from the business process. Now, the business processes have long been ignored in data warehousing build-outs, which is a problem. You need to focus on the business process. Why? How many of you have one and only one source system in your entire application, in your entire company to deal with? Anybody? You'd be lucky. It's very, very rare that I run into an all SAP company. But even then, you have to ask the question, well, wait a minute. You got SAP in Germany, you got SAP in China, you got SAP in the US. Now you got global problems because they all implemented SAP slightly differently. Now the data doesn't jive. Anybody ever done this? Yeah? That's a pain. So you got to look at the business processes because the business processes tie the data as an asset back to the business by business key. And this is the focus of the Data Vault componentry. Okay? You have to look at the business keys. So the nature of all of this, ultimately, you want to look at the process boundaries between each of these, but the size of these circles is really the scope that you're focused on. Okay? That's the scope. So you're going to cut these down vertically and implement them in 2 and 3 week sprints. And that's what we want to do, try to cut these down and look at them in that regard. Okay? So what you're after, small scope, quick release. How many of you have been in data warehousing situations where the change requests keep building and building and building and you never finish the queue? Yeah? This is a problem. You can't have that in an agile fashion. Or if you do, you can't claim to be agile. Agility also means being able to scale your teams. Don't forget, parallel teams is part of agile process. So if your scope grows or your requirements grow, your work backlog, or sometimes they call it a backlog, sometimes they call it a work in progress or a WIP. If that grows, you have to be able to scale your team. Now, I'm not talking about funding. That's a whole different issue to be able to scale your team, and that's something that politically has to be taken up. But what you want is an implementation paradigm like this. The scope is the size of the circle. So when rules change, when source system changes, when source systems get sunset, when new systems come in, you want your data warehouse to keep up with the business users' changes. This is absolutely vital to being successful in Agile. And this little note at the bottom, little to no re-engineering of existing queries and load processes. This is what the Data Vault model brings to the table. You have to have a solid architecture in order to have a solid implementation. Yes?
Could you go back one slide?
No, not for you. No, of course. Sure.
Oh, yeah. How do you synchronize the metadata between all these layers? If there's a change in one, how do you...
The metadata is managed through a governance process. When you start working down the Agile path, you heard me say this earlier on the stage, governance is extremely important. Okay, governance becomes paramount in a company in order to maintain agile or agility. So if you don't have anyone watching governance, and that includes metadata, metadata is a big piece of tying the business and the logical models to the business process and the business case. A huge piece. And I wish I could jump the gun and show you the slides that my friend has prepared from Q Super on this that will be at the IBM conference in Vegas in a couple months. But I can't. I don't have time. But governance is a big part of it. So there has to be someone there working the metadata angles alongside of all of these processes. It's a separate job stream. They're agile in their own right. And they work with the warehousing team to help get that done. Good question. Okay.
We can have a
I don't have a conceptual model. Yes, my comments earlier were talking about conceptual models. This stack is changing. I haven't updated this slide. Conceptual models, in my opinion, sit somewhere between the business case and the business processes. The scope of the conceptual model may vary depending on what you're doing. Now, I do use a technique for agile requirements gathering that captures the conceptual model. I use mind mapping tools. You guys ever know about mind mapping tools? You know what they are, right? They're really, really good at conceptual models and hierarchies. I haven't found a use for them until or except that. I looked at mind mapping back when it was huge and coming out, and vendors were like, you should do this, you should do this. I'm like, why? But then when I got into conceptual modeling, it all made sense. Conceptual modeling and layout ontologies, and I can do it on a presenter, a screen overhead, and I can do it in front of the business users, making my process of business requirements and business understanding agile. Because I can modify the conceptual mind map as they tell me that's wrong, this is right, and I can add definitions to it, not just terms. So if I don't have a business glossary to start from, or I don't have a common definition or data dictionary, and I'm trying to understand the business, these are fantastic tools for agility to make things move ahead. Yes, Danny? Yes. Well, again, you want to automate as much of this stack as possible, but that only comes with maturity of your agility stack. Okay? So let's move along here. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. I apologize. We're close, but we got to get there. Okay? I do have slides at the back of this show, if you can download them. For anything I don't get to, I think Steve allows you to download them on his website and whatnot, or that he may have given them out. But anyway, simple processes, well-trained team, manage re-engineering. You have to manage re-engineering. How many times have you heard a customer say, you know what, we built this for the last 5 years or 6 years, and this is what I hear all the time. And we can no longer afford to build more. We can no longer afford to implement changes. We have to greenfield it. And they think, oh, throw the old out and just bring in Hadoop, it'll solve all the problems. No, that's only one piece of the problem. Okay? Hadoop doesn't solve all the problems. There's people, there's process, and technology. And that's what's often forgotten by management. In order to be agile, in order to be fast, in order to be efficient, you have to have all these components. Okay, so how can technology deliver agile in an agile way? Well, technology must automate the standard processes. If you don't have standardized processes, if you haven't optimized your data warehouse build to the point of standard processing, you cannot hope to generate. When was the last time you were able to generate a fully conformed dimension load complete with business logic? Anybody? I have yet to see it. Okay? But data warehouse loads, different story, especially if you're in the data vault. And those of you who are building data vaults know. The source to stage is a defined standard, a well-defined standard. The stage into the vault is a well-defined standard. Real-time trickle feeds directly into the vault is a real standard. These things can be automated. They're pattern-based. They've been optimized already. So how do I do that? Well, if you've enabled all of these things, what's best but focus on enabling automation? You have to adapt to change. Why do we have automation as a big part of agility? Anybody? Okay. Once we get to automation, the business user comes in on the second day of an agile sprint and says, you know what? We changed our mind. Can you deliver this instead of that? You need to do some impact analysis, and hopefully the business user is going through a prioritization queue, right? We only respond to higher level C levels, director levels. So there's a whole bunch of training on getting your business users to not be noisemakers, come to your queue. There are certain types of business users, I'm sure you have them, that call you up every day, interrupt what you're doing, and build me this. You can do this, it'll only take you 5 minutes. Anybody ever had that call? Yeah? You got to stop that. You can't serve those people that are making noise and be agile. It's not going to happen. So to make adapting to change as cheap as possible, you need tools. But you need templates, metadata, and rules, and there it is. You need standards. You need standards, or automation tools won't help you, right? And it ends up being generated code for a software build. So how does the Data Vault 2 work with this? Patterns. Everybody should recognize this. This is a fractal pattern, right? You know what a fractal pattern is? You can zoom in at an infinite level, and you can zoom out at an infinite level, and it all looks the same. All looks the same. So it is infinitely scalable, right? So that's a fractal pattern. But patterns. We have patterns in the data vault for hubs, links, satellites, facts, stages, cubes, processes, deltas. All of this stuff is written into the new book. Sorry, I'm going quite quickly through this. I'm almost done. Bear with me. I'll open it up for questions. I think, how much time do we have for this session? I think we're out of time, actually. Aren't we supposed to end right about now? Okay? All right, so here's the deal. Automation tools. There are a couple tools I like in this market space, and MID is here. I didn't put them on the slide, but they're also helpful in automation from a business perspective and a stack perspective. There's a brand new tool in this space called data wrangling. As I said on stage earlier, data wrangling is known by lots of names. There are probably 20 different acronyms that you can call these data wrangling tools. It used to be called data exploration. If you've ever read Bill Inman's book, Data Exploration. And these data scientists, anybody in here a data scientist? You should read my blog. So you want to grow up to be a data scientist. But anyway, the point is this. This is a great tool. DataMir is for the managed self-service BI. It's for data exploration. It's for power users only. Okay. How many of you know that once you have a login to Hadoop, Hadoop is a file system, once you have a login to the server where Hadoop lives, that you can see everything, all data in Hadoop, regardless of who loaded it, when, and where? Yeah, there's a lot of security issues in Hadoop. So these are all things that need to be managed, okay? And then Analytics DS is a partner company. Full disclaimer, I do earn some money from them as a sales fee, so take it as you will. I'm not trying to hide anything here, but I do believe in their tool so much so that they actually generate data vault patterns, okay? And we're working with them on that. So a good piece. So some conclusions. Let's talk about this. This was a question asked earlier. What's the difference between Data Vault 1 and Data Vault 2? Data Vault 1.0 is focused on the data vault model, the hubs, the links, and the satellites. In other words, known as hub and spoke modeling, for those of you that aren't familiar with Data Vault. Did I also mention that Data Vault 1 is relational only? I may have missed that point. Data Vault 1 uses sequence numbers. By its very nature, the name sequence is not scalable. It means sequential. Anything that is sequential is not parallel. Anything that is not parallel is difficult to scale. Make sense? Data Vault 2 uses hash keys, and there's a whole bunch of arguments as to why hashes for uniqueness and what they cause. And yes, there are duplicate issues to worry about, but it is highly parallel, highly scalable. And that is all written into the book as well as in my classes. So let me finish up here and then open it up for questions. Data Vault 2.0 is a complete package of system of business intelligence, a complete package. A methodology, architecture, and modeling. In order to be agile or work with disciplined agile delivery, I'm going to give you the components of how to make that happen. The agile delivery methods will tell you or teach you how to enforce the people process of that. But we've got consistent and repeatable designs in the implementation side. We've got multi-tier scalable, and Data Vault 2.0 addresses no SQL. Now, here's the thing. You may have heard this too. NoSQL does not equal no modeling. So if you come to my next session on advanced data vault design, you're going to hear all about. I did, in all fairness, those of you who haven't looked at the agenda in the last 2 weeks probably missed my update. I changed the definition of the session. The next advanced data vault session is actually all about data vault on NoSQL and what it means. So it's going to be interesting. So if you're curious, you can come. I'd like you to come to that. But anyway. So this is the nature of it. It's a complete system of business intelligence, and Data Vault 2.0 provides for you to build a hybrid solution. You can buy hybrid solutions. Some of them are out there, like Greenplum, which is now, I think, called, it's called something else. It's owned by EMC. Anyway, there's a number of hybrid solutions out there. They are still nascent technology or emerging technology, so they're not fully fault tolerant. How many of you know that most Hadoop systems are eventual consistency? eventual consistency. That means when you insert data, it may or may not show up in your query for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I had a customer say, well, when is it going to show up? There's no way to know. The engine determines when it's going to propagate the data over to a node. And the reason he was asking when was we inserted it in the US, and it was propagating to a node in another part of the world. Okay? So that was kind of something to think about. So in case you're wondering, I have CITO, very interesting title, but it's the CIO and the CTO mixed together. Data Vault 2.0 brings the assurance that we can cope. And so this comes from an executive level. So if your business users are curious, how does Data Vault 2 work with agility? Here are some quotes you can use. Increase velocity and change without falling behind, quality improvement, right? All the big words and so on. This is how you contact me. But what I wanted to show you was what's behind the quotes. Just some interesting things. How much time do I have? Anybody? Danny, do you know? You don't know? Okay. So here's the deal. So what has been the biggest driving factor of Data Vault 2.0 that assists with your agile practices? I'm over. We're done. 5 minutes or we're done? Steve just poked in and said 5 minutes. So I guess we're done. But anyway, I'll just finish with this slide, and that'll be it, okay? There are more slides. I'm sure you can download them, but this just gives you an interesting thing. What I really wanted to do was show you this one. These are the metrics. Let me get to the metrics here. Here we go. These are the metrics that I'm thinking of. Okay, this particular individual gave me a lot of quotes for their enterprise, and people always ask me, what are the measurements? Well, look at this. The ability to ingest new data sources on demand in the Data Vault is a massive boost, okay? As empirical a discipline as analytics is, it's equally oppositely impacted by perception and emotive drivers. Comparatively, in their organization, what was quoted by IT as 4 weeks and a $50,000 price tag to ingest 4 new fields now takes them, under Data Vault 2.0, a system of thousands of fields in the same 4-week period. That's when you know you're succeeding at being agile for your business user. I thank you for your time. I hope this has been helpful to you. I know we kind of wandered all over the map. I appreciate it. Thank you.